Traveling the Vortex.
We've joined the Doctor as he enters the reality gate and arrive at episode 571, where we're not going to let the grown-ups have a go. I'm Keith.
I'm Sean.
I'm Glenn. How was everybody this week?
Good.
Anybody do anything or watch anything?
We went and saw Zoo Lights tonight for one of their kickoff events.
Oh, nice.
Make the zoo all pretty and lit up, and half of it was not, because apparently the rain and the electricity did not mix so well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it'd be a wet and cold night to do that.
Yeah, we were laughing about it because we've done this before, and it's a wonderful event. I don't want to take anything away from the event, but previous years that we've gone to this, it seems like we always manage to get there kind of late in the run, and things have started to malfunction. You know, the kids tripped over this and knocked down one of the displays, or this one burned out, or that. So there's little patches of it that you could see where this was gorgeous once upon a time, and it's still very pretty, but it's not now. So we were super excited about this kickoff event because we thought everything will be working. This is going to be great. And then we get there and half of the zoo is burned out because of whatever electrical issue they were having with the rain. And so we just kind of went, par for the course. But it's still good. And once they get it all up, I highly recommend it if you've not been. It's very pretty.
We've got Stormont Vale bought out, I think it was Sunday, this coming Sunday. And so we're going Sunday night. Sean, or Keith, what about you? Yeah, I guess he couldn't outdo you, so he left.
Does the recording program pick up the ta-tonk?
I don't know. I think it does, because I think it comes in through Discord, which I'm recording from. So
I was trying to open the Mirror article that Glenn posted in the document, and it caused my computer to freak out.
No, sorry.
Not going to do that again.
Keith, what about you? Did you do anything? Watch anything?
I got my Christmas lights up, and that's about it. Before it got cold.
We went and saw Xanadu at Washburn, which was a lot of fun. Really, really good musical, and the cast did just amazing. The gal that does the lead, Cleo, Kira, she was so good. In fact, there was times where I felt she sounded like Olivia Newton-John. And then the guy who played Sonny was pretty good too. But yeah, it was quite enjoyable.
And now the $64,000 question: was there roller skating?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What they did is you've got the round theater. And so what they did is they took the stage all the way to the floor, which I think most of the time it is. There's only occasions that they do the raised floor, but and then it was a big circle, and then they did kind of a minimal set thing, which worked really well, especially since they needed all that room. And I'd say probably for 2/3 of the show, she's on skates. For about half the show, Sonny's on skates, and then there's a big skate number at the end. And yeah, it was pretty cool. It was really well done.
There's a lot of roller skating then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
There was one point where Sonny goes kind of off stage, but he's there where you can see him from, not even from the waist down. It's just, she's talking and there's stuff going on. And then like he's walked over there, and then 2 minutes later he skates onto the stage, and you're like, wait a minute, when did he put these skates on? Well, come to find out, there's a trap door there on that side, and apparently somebody had lifted that door and put them on him while you're being distracted by what's happening on stage. So, but she comes over. It's really well done, because she comes over and she does this little thing where she kind of throws this like magic dust in the air kind of over him. And then suddenly he starts skating in, and it's like she magicked some skates onto him. It was really, really kind of cool. Nice. But for a small production of about 10 people, It was really, really well done.
They all say, who is Doctor Who?
This is Tim Trelaw.
This is David J. Howe.
I'm Peter Purvis.
I am Sadie Miller. This is Lauren Cornelius.
Larry, it's Fraser.
For all things in the Doctor Who collecting world and beyond, the Doctor Who Collectors Podcast. I'm Larry Van Mersbergen, your host, and I've been collecting for 42 years. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex on the Direction Point Podcast Network.
Hi, I'm Rupert Booth.
I am known as Paul Ferry.
And my name is Barry Williams.
Together, we host Time Ram.
Time Ram's a cruel mistress.
It's a random number generator.
That also.
We roll a number from 1 to 30, and that's our Doctor. Then 1 to 300 for the story, and then we ram them together.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Cruel, I tell you.
Time Ram, putting the wrong Doctors in the wrong stories, so you don't have to.
You're listening to Traveling the Vortex.
I did do one other thing. I listened to Doctor Who, The Decades Collection, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s.
Oh, yeah.
So that's going to be my something new 2-minute review. So this is a nice little set of novellas that covers these 3 decades. The first, I listened to the audio version. The first one was a 10th Doctor and Donna story read by Jacob Dudman, which kind of a miss in this whole box set that Jacob Dudman didn't do the 11th Doctor story. But it's a nice 10th Doctor Donna story dealing with some girl bands, pop bands, superstars that, you know, Donna grew up with and got to go back and be involved with that kind of their creation. And it's got a nice alien aspect to it that felt very much like a 10th Doctor story. But it was really enjoyable. The characterizations were good, and the overall story I thought worked well. 2000s focused on a 9th Doctor and Rose story, but it's all told from the perspective of an 11-year-old girl whose brother and mother get taken by a monster in her cupboard. And it turns out to tie into a rift that the TARDIS is going to come repower on, and it's a pretty solid story. It kind of, because it's the benefit to it, I think, is focusing from this one character's perspective, and so it kind of allows you to see everything from her view, and really helps kind of amp up the fear to it, and also leave the Doctor a bit more of a mystery. And then the final one was an 11th Doctor story set in the 2010s called The Angel of Redemption. And it is from the perspective of the weeping angel that sends Amy and Rory to their final destination, essentially.
That's kind of a novel idea.
Yeah, it's. I think it would work better in a written format because it's a lot of very short chapters, but it kind of gives you a vague back history of the angels as a species, and kind of how they work and communicate with each other. And then this one specific angel goes through this kind of growth of character and winds up saving the Doctor, spoilers, at the end of it. But I won't say how she goes about doing this or why the Doctor's even in danger. So it was very well done and very, very clever. But I think it probably would have been a little better read as opposed to listen to. And that's my something new 2-minute review.
Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome to the Doctor Who Target Book Club podcast, the only podcast to discuss, in story order, all the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and every 2 weeks or so, I'm joined by a 2 to 3 person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Who fan since 1979. That would be me. We also get the views of intermediate, casual, and novice fans who either have never seen the show or who have never read these books until these podcasts, including
Dalton Hughes
and
Alison Fitzsafried.
You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you find good podcasts, or even ones like ours. You're listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
You are invited on an adventure across all of time and space, in a completely random order. It's the Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. Jump in the TARDIS with your hosts,
Eric Gulbranson, Asad Kheshki,
and
Matthew Kressel.
Explore Doctor Who TV stories, audio adventures, and books, both novels and non-fiction. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast. It's the entire Whoniverse on shuffle. The Police Box in the Junkyard podcast is a member of the Direction Point Network and is available about once a month wherever you find your podcasts. You are listening to Traveling the Vortex.
Well, let's talk about some upcoming conventions. Chicago TARDIS this weekend in Chicago, Illinois. It's here.
Who's going?
November 24th through the 26th. And that'll be featuring Lisa Bowerman, Michael Trout, and Colin Baker, Caroline Ford, Peter Davis, and Sylvester McCoy, and the Traveling Vortex. Oh, no, we aren't going to be there.
Wah, wah, wah.
But one of these years we will be there. And then, of course, Athens Con is happening in the Palo Flero, Greece, I think is how you say it. And that's December 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And Eric Roberts will be at that one.
And traveling the... Oh.
Yeah, we're going to Greece, boys. And that is your upcoming Doctor Who conventions for now. Well, let's move on to news.
You want to take the first one, Glenn, since it caused my Discord to Skype out on
Yes,
me?
I can do that.
I don't want to click on that link again.
So the first one is the Mirror reporting that BBC Doctor Who fans could see the entire back catalog given a modern overhaul. Basically, it's alluding to the fact that because the Daleks is getting the color treatment to be screened this coming week, actually on Thursday, the War Games is said to have been next on the schedule. And in the latest issue, Doctor Who magazine, showrunner Russell T. Davis has said that he intends to colorize each story or every story that he can. And so it appears that the Mirror is reporting that the War Games will be the next one, which, I was thinking, well, that's a 10-part story. That's a lot to colorize. But they'll probably do the same treatment they do with the Daleks, where they took a 7-part story and trimmed it down to 5 minutes and colorized it. So I imagine they might do the same thing with the War Games, is make it a more omnibus, shorter version of the entire story, which might be difficult.
Based off the headline, I mean, you can't do the entire back catalog colorizing because most of it's colored. So if they're giving it a modern overhaul, that would indicate that omnibus tightening up of the story would give it that modern kind of overhaul.
The War Games is not in color?
No, but anything post that.
Oh, anything post that. Oh, yeah. Well, I think he means...
I mean, the headline says the entire back catalog.
You're right. I think they mean the black and white television. But although, that being said, though, maybe he intends to take a story from each era and give it although they've kind of already done that with Genesis of the Daleks, but take a story of every era and kind of give it because I think it's Mark Ayres has recorded new soundtrack for this Daleks, so that's coming up. So there's going to be some tweaks beyond the colorization. So maybe that's the idea, is to take a story.
And surely we could find a couple of Pertwee stories that don't need to be 7 parts.
Doctor Who and the Silurians. I'm looking at you.
Although the
article, I am.
The article does get more specific and talk about just colorization, so maybe it's just a clickbait headline.
Yeah, that's what I kind of assumed. And it is the Mirror, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. Who knows if it's actually going to be the War Games, and who knows if Russell is going to do more. Although he did state in the recent issue of the magazine that he intends to colorize everything he can. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I like to see how he's going to colorize those missing episodes.
I am so excited.
Oh, wait, the animation has done that.
Well, you take the next one, Keith.
Oh, up next in news, we had kind of bemoaned that we weren't getting the iPlayer treatment, and turns out we were a little early to speak because all of Classic Who is now streaming on Tubi completely for free. Well, not all of, but over 600 episodes.
Yeah,
I'll
a
say,
good
is
chunk
it the
of it.
same? All of Who that BBC iPlayer has.
Well, no, I don't even think it's that much, but it is. Yeah, it's a good chunk of everything that's,
It
that's
is.
available.
When I was scrolling through, it even has the animated stuff. I believe.
Oh, okay. So maybe it is. Maybe it does have everything that the.
I think the difference is because iPlayer said over 800 episodes and dropped all of New Who on there too. Because this is classic, it's only 600. So
yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now you said there are ads, but they are very minimal right now.
They are ads. I watched one episode so far, and it had an ad at the very beginning and an ad about halfway through it. Which the ad at the beginning was a little long. I don't know how long. I didn't look that closely, but halfway through was maybe 30 seconds to a minute max, so it wasn't bad at all.
On anything I've watched on Tubi has averaged about 2 to 2.5 minutes, so that first ad may have been about that long.
Yeah, so if they keep it that way, that's not bad. And I just looked, Galaxy 4 is on there.
Ooh,
that just happened to be the one I was able to pull up first. So
cool.
most of the animations, if not all of them, are there as well.
That's cool.
And they've got a nice little New to Who primer section that if you haven't watched any, you could watch it. And it looks like Doctor Who Am I is also on Tubi.
Oh, I think I saw that. Was that in your
documentary?
In your link I saw? No, I think I saw that on whatever was advertising that. Oh, I saw it on TikTok. One of my the guys I follow had broke this news about how to get it. He actually started out with explaining that Roku TV has it streaming, but you can't start, at the beginning. You have to watch whatever's on at the time, and it's streaming live. And then he also pointed out that Pluto TV still has their Doctor Who channel. And then he pointed out that Tubi has it, and you can watch it at your own leisure. So, not live streaming.
So it does look like Tubi does not have the older animations, just the newer animations.
Okay.
So the Invasion is not on Tubi.
Probably not Invasion. What's the French one?
Reign of
Terror.
Most of season 4 looks like it is there. But those are all mostly new.
Right.
I'm trying to get to where Reign of Terror was. That was season 2.
It was season 2.
Was that season 1?
No, it was season 2. Oh, well, no, it might have been the end of... No, it's... No, it's the end of season 1. It's near the end of season 1.
It is not. Season 1 ends with the censor rights.
Okay.
So not everything, but a large chunk of it.
Maybe eventually.
Yeah. Unfortunately, 10th Planet is not one either.
Yeah.
So.
I wonder if it's anybody that was done by the previous animation studios. Maybe they're still trying to secure some rights.
Yeah, that could be possible.
Anything that BBC America paid for.
That's still pretty awesome that you can get a decent back catalog of Doctor Who on demand. There's a live TV option and an on-demand option. Because like Roku TV and Pluto has live options, but you're kind of at the whims of whatever's airing at that time. Or it's nice to have an on-demand option.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited. More Who.
That's right.
Now, I do have to also preface it is these are not the Blu-ray copies. I watched the first episode of the 3 Doctors, and some of that, the video quality wasn't super great. So it must have been coming from the DVDs.
Yeah. Because that one is out on Blu-ray on one of the Pertwee seasons. So I guess I should ask Sean if he wants to talk about the the rumor mill article that he showed us.
The elephant in the room.
The elephant in the room. The same article that's been redressed every single time. Yes, there are collectors sitting on them. Yes, they are afraid to turn them over. Yes, they are out there. Yes, we don't know what they are, but we speculate what they are. We're referring to MovieWeb, who did another article. I think the thing that this one went as far to say, and I think that's been implied by some of the articles, and I think this is what was implied by Philip Morris, although I think he was being very cagey and trying not to give too much information, but I think it's been disclosed out there before that it is at least some of the collectors that have them are former employees. And that's what the biggest fear of retribution is from these guys having had them and being former employees. It does make it one step closer to, and the people that, the fans and the people that are trying to get them returned want the BBC to offer assurances that they aren't going to take any sort of legal action. And this falls back on a story that I cannot find anymore, but I read a year ago when all this was about. Apparently there was a presenter from the BBC that had collected a bunch of old television that he was holding on to, and he decided he wanted to turn it back over to the BBC, and, because he had it. And he wasn't even like stealing it or hoarding it. He just had it. But apparently when the BBC found out, they sent people to raid his home and took it. And then they threatened litigation against him and all this stuff. So that one incident is what has a lot of these collectors afraid to come forward and return what they have.
So the three things that I took away from this particular article that were new to me,
mm-hmm.
and I always, yes, I always bring it up, and yes, I'm, eternally hopeful that the Omni rumor is going to be a thing. I'm always amazed when something is reported. For somebody who just absolutely does not believe in it, doesn't really care about it, or at least professes to, Glenn sure knows a lot about this.
Well, I think that's the problem. That's the problem is, I think what they're doing is they're redressing this same story, and people like you keep falling for it. And that's what's annoying about it is it's almost got to the point where it's clickbait. This website has gotten the information, they've redressed it, they've maybe pulled a few more things out of it, but it doesn't say anything more than, to anybody, it doesn't say anything more than there are episodes out there that people aren't going to return. That's ultimately that's what it comes down to.
The three things that I took away from this article that were new to me, mm-hmm. at any rate, mm-hmm. was that they were specifically calling out 2 episodes,
mm-hmm.
in particular. They were specifically mentioned to be William Hartnell episodes,
mm-hmm.
which is not something that I had heard before. I just, lost episodes. Well, obviously it's going to be either a Hartnell or a Troughton. I mean, there's
mm-hmm.
only so much room there. And the third one being that the collectors are willing to turn them in, but fear the reprisals. Now that had been broke, whatever the last week or week before. That for me, that was a new one that I had heard, just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that was from the Guardian episode that we talked about a while back.
So, but
in fact, most of this is repackaged from that Guardian article.
Yeah. So, but just the fact that so they've narrowed it down even more. That it's not just missing episodes are being held on to. Yes, we've known that, but the fact that it is 2 episodes in particular. Now,
so which ones?
Well, that's just it. We don't know. It could be 2 episodes of William Hartnell that we already have.
That's my point, though, is until you tell me what they have, there's no new news here, because we know it has to at least be William Hartnell or Patrick Troughton. We know that those are the ones that are missing. And if you're going to say, okay, well, these are William Hartnell episodes, great, but which ones are they? So there's nothing new to it. That's why I think I get so frustrated, and I'll let you continue with the other discoveries, but that's why I get so frustrated with these articles, is because they are just fluff to get people to click on their articles, and it's timely because this is when this came out, it's the week of the anniversary, and so they're doing it to get views is all they're doing. But go ahead, I divulge.
Well, I suppose the first thing that I want to ask is, I don't know. Do we think that the BBC reacted the way the BBC reacted, and that the fear going forward is that the BBC will continue to react to that way.
Well,
because it is a government institution.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Is that they're?
I mean, if you stole from the U.S. government, they'd want their property back.
Yeah, if it were if it were something in the United States, I think there would be less repercussions because depending on how you got something, if you didn't outright steal it, then there's a lot less legal recourse that somebody could do. In the UK, because television is government regulated and government controlled and government created, there is a boundary there, I suppose, that legality is more severe as far as retribution in that, or at least perceived to be, because, and again, I think that honestly the problem is that the BBC has reacted poorly in the past, so they have basically scared a lot of people, ex-employees, particularly, they've scared a lot of people into, coming forward with these.
So now the next question I have is obviously as a fan, we want the BBC to just say, okay, amnesty.
Right.
Just
so
let's scan it. Let's make a copy of it.
So this article is saying that the BBC has changed their mind or has come out and said they would do that?
No, that's what the fans
that's my point. It's stuff we already know. The BBC has been silent on this kind of stuff. We know there's stuff out there. It doesn't make any sense to continue to report that there's stuff out there that nobody's going to get to see until somebody makes a move, and there's no moves being made.
Okay, but where I want to go now is I want to move on from that article.
Okay.
And not necessarily the reporting of it.
Right.
But I want to discuss the situation. So as fans, we want the BBC to offer that amnesty. We want to see the stuff returned, if for no other reason, because we want to watch it.
Absolutely.
And I think that, that we would even be okay with, don't return it. Just let us make a copy of it. Let us scan it into so that we have it in the archive, and you can keep the original film reel. I don't care at that point.
Well,
and
we can't make that decision though. The BBC.
Obviously.
Okay.
But as fans, I think we would all be okay with that. If it came down to it, even if it was a matter of you were a BBC employee at the time, and yes, you stole it. We have video of you taking that reel and walking out the door with it. But if you bring it back in and let us make a copy of it, we won't say nothing. I mean, that's where the fans, I think, would like to see this go.
Well, I think you're overstating there too. I don't think the BBC has any evidence that it's stolen. So I think I think that even is one mark for these ex-employees is there's probably no proof that they walked out of there with them, and there's a chance that they were, they were film collectors after they had left the BBC because they worked in television, and they may have obtained these materials from somewhere else and not walked out the door with them.
Right. But even if it was to that point, the fan side of things is just let them come back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the BBC side of things, the legality of the government aside, don't you think it would kind of make sense if you were in charge of the BBC? Isn't there something that you could issue a statement and yes, we'll work with people? I'm just really shocked that if this kind of news is going to continue to be reported, especially because it's the 60th anniversary and we're going worldwide and we've got the Disney dollars and we've got this, doesn't it make sense for the BBC to take a step back and say, we overreacted, we're sorry, let's extend this olive branch?
Let me put this forth, because maybe this is what's not being conveyed in this as well. The reason why we keep getting the same story over and over again is because we don't know what's happening behind scenes. We don't know.
That's true.
The BBC may very well be working with some people. They're probably working with these intermediaries to get this stuff back. They're probably, there is the problem is we get these speculative articles from these film guys that supposedly are in the know, but they can't say much. And so we get these really vague articles that end up being the same thing we know. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Yes, all of that could be happening. Yes, we definitely want that, but we wanted that, a year ago when this was first reported. We wanted this 3 years ago when Philip Morris reported this. Now, Morris was more implied that it was collectors that just didn't want to give it up, not necessarily that it was people that are afraid of retribution. That has come to light in the last, year. But ultimately, until there is movement, until the BBC comes out and says we're granting amnesty, or until we have a collector saying, you know what, I'm going to come forward with it anyway, this is all just a retread of the same news. I think that's my only point about this, is it doesn't do anybody any good to get fans excited about the possibility of more Doctor Who out there when when there's no movement on it. And I think ultimately what this does is it's a disservice, because for the people that want it back, they get frustrated and they get mad and they get angry, because that's just what we do on the internet now. And whenever you put these out, you constantly bring that anger back to the surface. And they're, because people are frustrated that they can't see these classic stories that allegedly are being held out there somewhere. So that's why I hesitate to continue to drive these stories into the discussion, because it was fun to discuss this, 3 years ago and 10 years ago when the omnibus rumor was out. It was fun to discuss that kind of stuff back then, but now it's just old hat and it's just angering people. And we don't need any more anger in Doctor Who, because we're going to be talking about something here in a little bit that's going to be bringing up the whole reason that there's anger in Doctor Who again. So that's just my point about, that's just my point of these articles being really just nothing burgers.
When there is something that is new to me in one of these articles, even if it's the same old story, but then there's a little nugget of, I didn't know that part of it. Mm-hmm. To me, it is hope.
Yeah.
It is hope springs eternal. That's because I'm an optimist. I'll admit it. I've got my rose-colored glasses on. So I don't look at it as, is it frustrating? Yes, absolutely. It's frustrating. And once again, I would plea, if there's a collector out there, contact us. We'll figure out a way to help you and make it work.
Contact Sean particularly
me. I'll do what I can.
He'll work as a liaison.
Yes, absolutely willing to do it. Absolutely. But
fair enough.
I'm always hopeful.
Fair enough. Well, I did put it in there so we could talk about it again anyway. I could have just said, no, we're not talking about
it. He wanted to talk about it.
He did. He likes to be poked with a stick.
Well, should we move on to some stuff that we actually have?
Yeah.
First thing we're doing is we're going to review Talking Doctor Who, which is a documentary that is hosted by none other than David Tennant, looking back at the history of Doctor Who and giving a bit of a
synopsis,
giving a bit of a primer and behind the scenes of 60 years worth of television. So go ahead, Keith.
As part of the 60th anniversary celebrations of Doctor Who, David Tennant time travels back through the BBC archives to tell the story of the Doctor's classic era, with a selection of rarely seen interviews and clips covering William Hartnell's first incarnation right through the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy. On the way, David compares some of his own experiences with the actors who came before him and shares special archive moments that reveal, amongst other things, how to film a regeneration, which actor was a master of modern gadgetry, including a collapsible caravan, and what the factors were that helped decide how a doctor selects his own individual and distinctive costume.
Well, what'd you think of it, Sean?
Where was that section? I don't remember the costume part.
It was briefly talked about there at the end, or near the end. They talked about, I think he talked about how the third Doctor got his by stealing it. I mean, it was a little throwaway.
Yeah,
it was just a little throwaway thing in the middle there. It wasn't really it wasn't as long of a piece as the collapsible caravan. I will say, I don't want to disparage this documentary because this documentary isn't for somebody like me. it was fun to hear David Tennant talk, especially when he's the best parts of this was him watching the clips and then making his own commentary about things. Loved that. The problem is the rarely seen things. Yeah, they are rarely seen by people, but I had seen everything in this. Every single interview they did in this, I had seen somewhere, with the exception of the collapsible caravan. I had never seen that clip of John Pertwee showing off his collapsible caravan and collapsing it. What do you say, 40 seconds, which I think it was actually like 2 minutes, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So for me, this was a nice trip down memory lane again. It was nice to see some of these interviews that, I had seen before. That rare William Hartnell clip is always very cringy to me because it's from a point in his life where he's kind of tired of hearing about it and he's wanting to move on. Mm-hmm. You don't get a lot of that in a lot of the surrounding media. So to get it from his, from the horse's mouth there, it's like, oh yeah. And, Patrick Troughton obviously told that lady that's interviewing him a lot of stuff that then he didn't want her to bring up, and then she brought up because he just, oh no, I didn't say that. That's a lie. I didn't do. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, you did. But anyway, so those are a little cringy there, but I think everything beyond that, is kind of fun to rewatch. But there was nothing new to this, although I don't think I expected there to be anything. I sort of expected it to be what it was. But as a presentation for people that aren't as in the know, the not-wees, as they call them in the UK, I think this was a good, overlook at the behind the scenes of Doctor Who. And I could see where it was very enjoyable.
As someone who has not delved into every single bonus feature and watched all these classic interviews, the only one I had seen was William Hartnell's.
That translates to, as to somebody who has a life.
As to a not we, I thoroughly enjoyed the whole thing. I'd seen. I think I got annoyed and frustrated with William Hartnell and turned off that interview when I tried watching it the first time on its own. But I thought this was. I went into this kind of expecting it to be like a Doctors Revisited type thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a very unique approach to look at the history of Doctor Who through the interviews with the actors who played the Doctor.
I would agree with that, yeah.
Talk shows.
Yeah.
I thought that was a unique premise to go forth with the documentary and not completely rehash everything that everyone has seen before.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So, yeah, the diehard fans who pick up all the Blu-rays and dive into every single bonus feature, this probably isn't anything new for them, but as someone who has not done that, just with young kids don't have the time, I got a lot out of this and really enjoyed it. I don't know. Okay, maybe I didn't get a lot out of it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
It was a half hour of entertainment for sure. Or
almost
an hour of entertainment.
It was an hour, pretty much an hour of entertainment, and it wasn't. While the interviews and stuff weren't revealing or shocking or giving me a lot of knowledge, it was great to see those actors out of character and sometimes in character doing interviews.
Right.
Specifically John Pertwee.
John Pertwee, yeah.
It was just really enjoyable. I liked it a lot.
I'm still struggling with all of that.
The collapsible caravan?
Well, yeah, that just really shattered my little mind.
Yours never collapsed that fast, did it?
No, it didn't. I mean, you can take a sledgehammer to it and it'll collapse pretty quick. But I actually sat down with Shy to watch this because the description, David Tennant travels back in time to look at classic Who, I kind of assumed it was going to be a primer for new viewers to come in, and here's an overview. And as Keith said, it's kind of like Doctors Revisited. Very quickly went, oh, wait, no, that's not what this is. This is a whole bunch of talking head interviews and recapping other interviews. And
yeah, I'm sure
Shy, it's okay.
Shy's attention just went, whoop, nope.
I was really hoping for something magical that would get her into Who, and this was not
it. No.
Now, I kind of straddle the line between the two of you because I don't necessarily think of myself as a not-we, but there were many of these interview clips that I had not seen before. I think I had seen the Hartnell one and parts of the Tom Baker one. I think were probably the only two that I was real familiar with. For the rest of it was all pretty new. And so the clips in themselves were interesting and attention grabbing, but I just kind of struggled with who is this documentary for? Because a newbie coming to the show who knew nothing about it, I don't think would really get a whole lot out of these interview segments. And a fan who has devoured all of the Blu-ray content isn't going to see anything new, other than David Tennant's reactions to some of these things.
Well, clearly this is made for Keith.
Apparently.
I mean, there's the answer to your question.
So I'm very glad that we got David Tennant and a half hour for Keith, because but yeah, I mean, just kind of beyond that, I'm sitting here going, who in England is sitting here watching this going, oh, I didn't know that. I just
And to be fair, it is airing on BBC 4. It's not like it's on BBC 1.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's kind of a
just
kind
because
of an
the number's
offshoot.
higher doesn't make it any less important.
I think that I thought it did. I thought BBC 1 was the prestige, and BBC,
BBC
4
1
is the
ESPN de Ocho.
Yeah, pretty much. Isn't that how that works?
I mean, let's not forget, Torchwood started on BBC 3. I mean, come on.
This is like Disney XD. Come on.
All right, fair enough. I like it for what it is. I think it's great. It's just going into it, I was hoping it was going to be something different, and then it was just more of a, for me, just walking down memory lane of things I had already seen. I was glad to have watched it. It didn't feel like it was an hour. It really felt like it clipped along. And I think a lot of that has to do with the bridging of it by David Tennant. He's very engaging, charismatic, and it was fun to watch him watch those clips. Because it's stuff that he obviously hadn't seen before, which was great.
Yeah, I could have done, if you want to give me a whole hour of David Tennant geeking out over Doctor Who, I'm all for it. I mean,
yeah. Definitely
that's definitely the highlights of it. That and the collapsible caravan.
Yeah.
Which really felt like a commercial. I mean, it really felt like Pertwee is like, and now we're going to go have some Tastios. All right, look how great this cereal is. I mean, it was that, but it was the caravan. Look how quickly I can take this apart.
Right.
It was also, at least for me, fun to see Stephen doing his Blue Peter thing, knowing he had done it post Doctor Who, but actually seeing him do some of that, I enjoyed that too.
Yield Who-mobile.
Yeah, that clip I think I had seen, but I don't think I realized that was Peter Purvis hosting.
Yep. Well, all right. Well, let's move on and talk about. We're doing the last two parts of Liberation of the Daleks, which was the ongoing comic strip in Doctor Who magazine that was featuring the 14th Doctor. Where's your synopsis this time, Keith?
It ends.
What'd you guys think of the wrap up of this story?
It's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still sort of feel like it ended 2 issues ago.
Yeah.
I understand why they felt like they had to have this big, invasion with the Golden Dalek, bringing everything together, and they had to have the big battle, climactic battle at the end. It just, I don't know. It feels like an RTD story where it's really great ideas and it runs up to a certain point and you're thinking this is doing really well, and then you just throw a bunch of action at you at the end, and you're like, okay, well, it's nice eye candy, but it didn't really, it really could have been over a little while ago.
Yeah.
It suffers from what a lot of Dalek stories suffer from, which is a pretty unique and genuinely cool concept that gets explored for the bulk of the story and then must be dropped in order to tick the boxes of the Dalek story needs.
That's a good point,
And so we've got two different factions of Daleks. What's going to happen? Well, they're going to fight. I mean, that's
This
just...
time we have like 7 different factions of Daleks.
Right,
I mean, and full props to that one panel for the artwork to give us the stained glass Dalek.
Yeah,
which was pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, okay, we're gonna fall back on our... It's like watching a Master episode and wondering when the the alien that he's helping out is going to turn on him.
Right.
It's just kind of waiting around for that shoe to drop, and then all the action kicks up, and it's like, oh, here it is, and there. Okay, we can cross that off the list. We're done. Yeah, the whole idea with this protoplasmic entity Daleks, I was far more interested in than them becoming real Daleks. So just, I don't know, but yeah, it kind of petered out for me.
And the fact that 9 Lambda kind of lived and doesn't really truly resolve all of everything. Like the protoplasm aspects of the Daleks are all taken care of, obviously, but I never felt like I really got a true resolution just because there was just action, no resolution.
Right.
Well, and ultimately, I think what it comes up for is the entire 14-issue comic was written so that we could get to the final panel as the jump-off point for the next story.
Well, that's what I think is fascinating about this. Is that was the scuttlebutt for a while, was that, oh, okay, well, Liberation of the Daleks is leading up to this minisode, this what was it, the
Children in Need?
Yeah, but there's actually a name for that episode. I can't remember. Minisode. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, leading up to the Children in Need minisode. And then when I read this, I went back after watching this and I read it and I thought, well, okay, it's almost a throwaway line that it's happening because, he says that he talks about the fast return switch and going to take care of it because he doesn't want to go back to Skaro in a hurry. And then it does tie in, but it didn't tie in like I expected it to. I guess maybe I had some expectations that I built up that weren't there.
Yeah.
Not to mention let's move on to the minisode, because not to mention when the 14th Doctor comes out of that TARDIS and says, I was just a woman
60 minutes
ago. I thought, wow, this whole 14 story arc, Liberation of the Daleks, took place in 60 minutes. Which, I mean, I guess it could have, but...
Sums up that story, though.
Right.
Yeah, 60 minutes, it's over.
So, yeah. Well, what'd you guys think of the Children in Minnesota? There's a lot to deconstruct with this one here.
What a beautiful piece of fluff.
Yeah.
I had fun watching it.
It
wasn't until afterwards that I learned some...
It is a blast. It is a blast to watch. I think that the guy that plays Davros did a fantastic job. He walked in and I thought, oh, this is pre-Davros in the mobility unit.
That's what I thought too.
And then as we started placing the timeline, I kept thinking, well, wait a minute, this isn't going to work, because if you go back to all the other stuff, he had gradually come to the point he was at when we got to Genesis of the Daleks. So I thought, okay, this seems to be throwing all that out just for a one-off gag. And I thought, okay, I'll be fine with that. We can play with that. And then the whole idea of the TARDIS crashing and taking off the gripper arm that obviously would have been a more effective weapon for a Dalek or tool for a Dalek, and replacing it with the, as they call it, a sink plunger, I thought was a great gag. I thought it was hilarious. I love that Davros comes in and has this look on his face like, what on earth has happened here? And then he likes the the change. So I thought that was kind of fun. I love the idea that the 14th Doctor is the one that named the Daleks, basically, because he gave the one guy the idea of how to make the anagram work. Yeah. I love that the Doctor's responsible for putting the plunger on as a tool on the Dalek. I loved conceptually that whole thing, and I had a lot of fun watching it. I loved watching David Tennant as the 14th Doctor. It made me so excited for the specials, even more so. I think what just was a little weird was RTD's explanation for why Davros is not in the chair.
Well, let's not get to that yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I agree with you. I enjoyed all of that. I thought it was very clever, very funny. It was a very tongue-in-cheek kind of short special that you expect from Children in Need. That when it was done, it was like, okay, that was fun, but I don't know if I would consider that canon, just because of the continuity issues that Davros presented in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got to see the article or the quotes from RTD about it. Sean, what do you think?
I had heard part of RTD's article ahead of time. So I was spoiled on that particular reveal. But then I sat down and watched the episode, and I enjoyed it. I found it to be, just as I said, it's delightful, it's funny, it's cute. Is it canon? Well, yeah, because if you consider previous Children in Need specials, like Time Crash,
mm-hmm.
or Barcelona, if you are going to count those, you got to count this one. And so the fan element getting all up in arms about it, I mean, I guess you can be upset over that. As we've said repeatedly, the Earth has been destroyed by solar flares 3 different times in Doctor Who history. They've discovered Atlantis how many times and sunk it. Stuff repeats. And not only does it repeat, it repeats differently.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're dealing with a show about time travel, and we are still coming off of the Time War and flux and, destroying things and rebuilding them, I'm okay with the change. And I 100% agree with RTD's reasoning for it.
I was going to say, I had a real good think about it, and I thought, I think that he really does genuinely have a point. I think that if it is one more thing that we can do to make our thing more inclusive to others, then I think it is a good thing. I think it is something that it does not rupture the storytelling of Doctor Who in any way. All it does is change elements of it. And as you eloquently said, we've seen the things happen time and time again, and there's been things. But I think more poignantly, I think the thing that there was one line in this, and I went to go back and watch it again a couple of times to listen for it. But there is one line in this that I think explains what's happening, and what fixes kind of everything, is the 14th Doctor says the timelines of canon are rupturing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, that's true.
And that being said, I think that's going to be an element going forward. And I'm not going to get into this because Keith chose not to listen to the information that rumors that I were hearing, but Sean will attest that this sort of lends to something that could possibly happen coming very soon from the run of Doctor Who. And I think I'm sort of even okay with that to a point now as well, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, when we did our most recent rewatch of the Bond films, I was really kind of struck by that. When you sit down and you watch them back to back, it becomes kind of glaringly obvious that we default to people with deformities as henchmen. You know, they're all hulking with metal teeth, or albinos, or scarred, or this one weeps blood, or they're always the bad guy, and in some way, shape, or form. And Bond in particular is extremely bad about it. And so seeing RTD come out and explain, we just don't want to do this anymore. And it's like, that's noble. That's not being woke. That's being, let's be a little more inclusive and not point this out. It's like going back and watching
it's not woke.
A favorite sitcom.
It's common decency is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like going back and watching a favorite sitcom from the 80s or 90s, and then they start making fat jokes. And it's cringy now. And it was like, what were we thinking? That this was okay, that this was part of the accepted discourse at the time. And so, yeah, I totally don't have a problem. And, we still brought Julian Bleach back to play Davros, who has played Davros before.
Right.
And, very much still looks the part. I love the fact that they're not hiding the fact that the Daleks are Nazis. It's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, the allegory's kind of always been there, especially from Genesis of the Daleks on. But now we're just really reinforcing it.
Right.
Did anybody else think that the disembodied voice on the PA system?
Oh, that was Niter.
Totally Niter.
That was totally Niter. Yeah, that was totally Niter.
Definitely.
Yeah. Completely Niter. At least in my head canon, that's Niter. It sounded just like him, and I think that was the point.
Yeah, it really did. Considering they referenced the fact that, I'm at Genesis Daleks. I mean, they knew what they were doing on that.
Right.
And it's interesting, too, that at least as far as the Doctor's timeline, they've now had 3 Dalek stories in a row, going from the end of Flux into Liberation into Children of Need. It's like,
I suppose that's true, yeah.
Which maybe is why they're going to be arrested.
Well, I did think it was funny that they brought that out, and Russell was talking about the Daleks could be arrested, the Daleks could be arrested, and then the first thing that he does with his tenure as Doctor Who is do a Dalek story.
And then go on to Unleash, saying this is how Davros is going to be moving forward. So obviously he has plans at some point to bring Daleks and Davros back.
Right.
It's not just a one-off situation.
Well, I think we said last week when we talked about that there's no way in heck they're going to be rested for long. So he's going to do something with them eventually.
Now, I will say that to Davros, the character's credit, and I'm completely spitballing here because I don't know. I genuinely don't believe that was necessarily Terry Nation's intention.
No.
When I think of Davros and kind of the classic Davros in the chair, it makes sense that his injury, he's going to move into this, creating something in his own image and making the Daleks look like his travel chair,
right,
his travel machine, and that kind of parallel. So I get that element of it, and I really think that was more of where they were going with Davros. But as Davros, and we've talked before with the Dalek episodes, how Davros becomes more and more and more Dalek as he goes. and loses more and more and more of his humanity.
Right.
If he ever had any.
Well, yeah, eventually he's just down to a head. So
inside the Emperor Dome. But I'm curious to see where we go from here.
Yeah.
And look forward to it, because I think it'll be an interesting, as interesting as previous encounters with Davros have been. I think the potential is there for just as interesting confrontations going forward.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else on that Children's in Need minisode? A lot of fun.
It's been too long.
Still made me excited for the specials coming out. So we'll see what happens. Well, the last thing, of course, we did then was we caught the red eye overseas because we weren't able to see this because the Peter Davison Blu-ray box set is not out in the United States yet, but we decided to go over to the UK and take a look at season 20 box set, because on there is the 5 Doctors 40th anniversary edition. So it's the 40th anniversary of the 20th anniversary story of Doctor Who.
20 plus 40, 60.
60. So I don't think we need to go in depth. We've obviously reviewed this story before, but let's talk a little bit about the updates that they did to it and some of the, what I felt were major improvements to both the effects in the very first original and the one that they did for the what anniversary was that one that they did? The special edition and the that'd have been
that was the
30th anniversary?
I think it was the 20th.
I think it was the 20th. Yeah.
20th of the 20th
anniversary special of the 20th.
Yeah. So,
or maybe it was the 25th anniversary.
What'd you think of the time scoop, Sean?
You know, the first instance of it, I don't know that I was a fan. It was better than the Tornado. By leaps and bounds, better than Tornado. But I still kind of miss my Phantom Zone trapezoid. By the third or fourth use of it,
it's the same spirit as that, though. I think.
Yes, very much so.
You see them in it,
and by the third or fourth use of it, I was like, no, I think this is really cool how they did this. And the one that nailed me was Sarah Jane.
When it puffed and there was like it kicked up the dust. I think it did that on Bessie. That's the one that I thought was the best, is when it comes down on the Third Doctor and Bessie, there's a puff of dust underneath it as it takes off.
What's also impressive is there are times when they pick up the people in the grass, you see a little burn spot in the grass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the Sarah
impressive.
Jane one, they had the kind of almost like a crop circle.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's the one that is most notable. Yeah.
But most importantly, Elizabeth Sladen was instructed and directed, run across the road, wave your arms in the air, hold your purse at a weird angle, and then wait.
Mm-hmm.
And so she runs across the road and freezes for an interminable amount of time before this graphic comes down and grabs her. It has always bothered me.
Right.
As a kid, it bothered me. It looked awkward. And, there's so much that I can forgive with Doctor Who, the wobbly sets, the plastic bubble wrap, the this, the that, the other. That scene has always bugged me. And this fixes it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
The way this thing comes down, it moves in faster.
Yeah.
It covers her up, so it's not as obvious as to what's going on. And then the cool effect with the little ray kind of shooting out at the bottom, like they're being sucked up into the thing, and it lands and it gives the crop circles. It's wow,
and gives a reason for
so much cooler.
Gives a reason for a frozen Sarah Jane Smith there, using the imagery.
Yeah, well, and it's just better.
Yeah,
it just all around works better. The way that
Yeah.
scene is cut works better. It's not as
I agree.
Like I said, it's not as obvious. I don't even notice that. I backed it up and watched it again, and it was like, they don't do that anymore. She's not frozen there in space, just waiting for this thing to snag her. It's so improved. So that was the one that really won me over. But with each successive one, I was like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
This is a nifty effect. And it definitely is a melding between the two.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was happy with that.
The monitor effect of the entrapped Fourth Doctor and Romana, I think, was so much better.
That was good.
I think that looked really great. I think the other thing that I noticed in this bothered me at one point, though. The Raston robot, when it does the jump, it has that kind of that star effect, that starburst effect that it did, which I thought was a great addition to its, disappearing. It kind of gives it more of that element of it is sped off kind of thing. What really bothered me is they forgot to put it on 2 of the scenes. And so they do it and it's on all of them. And then there's 2 that it's missing. And then right after that, it's there again. And I thought, that completely took me out of it because you forgot to put that effect on these 2 times that the robot does that.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Because I was so enamored with the effect. I was really looking for it each time. And
I didn't notice the effect in the first place. So it's also a good sign of the effect.
It's this, I say it's a starburst. It's just, it's kind of a flash of white light as it disappears or as it, takes off, I suppose.
See, I guess I assumed that was just because it's been a while since I've watched the original version.
No, the original and the special edition just has it disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a jump cut, literally in that one scene.
I thought the effects they did on Rassilon were a nice addition as well.
It makes it look less like a floating head and more like a apparition.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I thought was really, really well done is the monitor shots of the Dark Tower when the Fifth Doctor is referencing things on it. They use it several times. It has more of a 3D modeling look, but it's still...
of almost with the hexagons.
Yeah, but it still retains that kind of, simplistic look that it had in the original, so it doesn't take away from it. They didn't really throw something more modern and obviously different, so it melded well and it blended better because they used kind of compromised on both imagery, which I thought was neat.
You're talking about the console?
Yes, on the console when they would show the mapping whenever they were looking at different locations on it, or it would widen out so they could see like the base and the top. And
when they're briefing the master.
Yes.
And they've kind of got the whole hologram up on the
on
the wall there for him. What really struck me was, of course, the Death Stone is home to the game of Rassilon. And yet here we have designed this overhead map that kind of sort of looks like a role-playing board.
That's a good point.
Like it's, those little hexagon squares that this is where your character would go. And, it really had that vibe to it. And I thought that was very clever. Yeah. I was like, I see what you guys did there. That's cool.
Yeah. I think the other effect that I noticed that was much better was whenever they would transmat in and out. That effect was really cool that they put on there, that kind of red glowish dissolve that they did, which they had put an effect on it for the 20th anniversary one, but I felt this one worked a lot better than even that one did.
I think it's amazing and so much fun that we can sit here and dissect a story like the Five Doctors with the effect sequences. It just reminds me of the special editions of Star Wars coming out, and going to see that in the theater with a opening night with a whole room full of uber geeks, and everybody having the same reaction at every new CGI thing. Yeah. Ooh, I mean, just everybody was excited over the same stuff,
right,
and how impactful that was for a movie that you've seen 8 zillion times. And here we are doing it to the Five Doctors. Really? Yes, really.
And if they've done the other special edition or special effects updates like this, I'm going to be more inclined to go back and watch those because previously I had just written them off as, I don't want to this updated special effects. Now I kind of do.
There are some that have been done better than others. I've gone back and watched some of them, and there are some that I've watched and I've gone, oh wow, that was the imagining of that, or the reimagining of how they did that was much better this time. And then there's some cases that I go, I think I like the original effect better. So, but yeah, it's definitely worth going back and looking at some of the new ones.
Well, they can't all be trapezoid phantom zones.
Thank goodness.
It's better than the tornado.
Better than the tornado.
Much better than the tornado. I never was a fan of that silly spinning vortex thing.
Still not a scoop.
I thought of that. I thought I saw that thing, and after I warmed to it, and then after I got it really into it, and then my last thought was, it's not a scoop. He's going to complain.
We are going on a journey, a very long journey, through the world of the Target novelizations in publication order. Every week, we are looking at a new book, talking about Terrence Dicks, Malcolm Hulke, and all our Doctor Who novelization friends. Whatever you do, keep turning the pages. This is Jason Miller of the Doctor Who Literature Podcast, a member of the Direction Point Podcast Network, and you are listening to Traveling the Vortex, a Direction Point podcast.
Well, Sean, what do we got coming up on the schedule?
Coming up on the schedule, believe it or not, I'm still not sure I believe it because it's here.
Yeah,
the Star Beast on film,
on digital.
It's here.
It's not on film. We don't shoot things on film anymore.
Let me have this one, will you? just
there might be some listeners like, what's film?
You're right. Film.
Live action. Now he's going to complain about that because it's CGI or puppets or whatever. Yeah, so
that is live action. Puppets are live action.
The first of the Doctor Who specials is here.
Yay.
And we will be covering it. And it's an anniversary because, 60 years. And we're off and running. It seems like the buildup for this has been interminably slow. That we've been talking about this year being the 60th anniversary, and nothing was coming, and nothing was coming, and nothing was coming. And then everything came.
Mm-hmm.
Like the floodgates opened, and there was news every week.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still, I can't wait for this thing to get here. And now it's here. At last, it is here. So yeah, we're going to talk about it a lot. I hope you guys are ready.
Nah.
It's going to be a long episode.
Well,
now.
I was going to bring up too that if we're able to get a hold of the colorized version of the Daleks, we may chat a little bit about that as well. So it might be a really long episode next week.
The images that came out were pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 3 weeks of specials, and then we're going to do a fun and games.
Yeah. Speaking of role playing,
right. And
then another special.
And then another special.
Yeah.
Some Christmas this time.
We are so spoiled. We say that now. Then,
right.
We'll hit another hiatus.
Right.
And be like, no.
Oh, guess what? The next series is not until 2025. What? Of course, you can find us on...
We've decided to adopt the Sherlock method of releasing things.
Great.
You're going to get 4 seasons spread over 15 years.
3 episodes apiece.
The good news is they're an hour and a half long.
Yeah, that's true.
You can find us at our website, travelingthevortex.com. If you get any value out of this podcast, why not consider putting some value back into it? You can do that by clicking on the Patreon link and support us there. When you become a patron of the podcast, you unlock more audios and specials by us. We've just uploaded another trivia quiz, so if you're a patron member and you've taken that quiz, let us know how you did. Also, please consider giving us a 5-star rating wherever you subscribe to this podcast. It helps bump us up in the ratings and the recommendations. And, of course, you can find us on the various forms of social media. Anything else we need to talk about before we close this one?
Yeah, we need to point out that we were asked and were gracious enough to join for My 70s TV Childhood. The podcast is celebrating Doctor Who as well, specifically looking at the 70s era of Doctor Who. So go check them out. We are featured in their most recent episode. There will be an episode this week and then an episode next week, two categories of conversation that you can listen to. A variety of other Doctor Who podcast hosts join the host of his show for the discussion. So go check that out.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun to take part in that. We had a blast doing that for them.
And thank you again for the invite.
Yes. Absolutely. All right. If that's going to do it for this week, until next week, I'm Glenn.
I'm Sean.
I'm Keith.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.
Be seeing you.
Thanks for listening.
You have been listening to Traveling the Vortex. Doctor Who and all of its associated programs are owned and trademarked by the BBC. No infringement is intended or implied.
Direction point! Direction point!
A Doctor Who podcast network.